take our time, Boris. Tell us when you're ready.
Yeah, do you want to put a desk up? So
We're ready to go.
Do you need to come back down now?
No, I'm going to do back here.
Okay. Good evening and welcome. I'm Andrea Melrine. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County, and we're here tonight to discuss the Lackawanna County ballot questions that will be on the primary ballot on May 21st. So we have a little bit of a panel discussion and some Q&A coming up pertaining to the 5 questions that will be on the ballot for us. So first, I want to say thanks to our partners, ECTV, of course. We couldn't get this information out to so many people without the help of ECTV, so thank you, Mark. And then also the Political Science Department at the University of Scranton and the university for allowing us the use of the facilities here on campus for all of our League of Women Voters events. We appreciate their support as well. I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about the League of Women Voters. We are a nonpartisan political organization. That means that we neither support nor oppose any candidate for any political office. However, we do encourage informed and active participation in government, and we influence public policy through education and advocacy. And tonight is one of those types of events where we're looking to educate on what the ballot questions mean. I do want to make a serious point, though. We are an organization of both women and men. The name League of Women Voters goes back to our founding by the women who fought the battle for us to have the right to vote. And we retain that name out of deference to those who came before us. However, we are an organization of both men and women, so we encourage all of you to join the League. Some of the projects that we have, candidate debates and forums. We have 4 additional programs that are coming up for this election season. We have a candidate forum with the candidates for the Lackawanna County Register of Wills. We'll have a debate with the candidates, they're all Democrats, for Scranton City Council. We have a debate with the Republican candidates for Scranton Mayor, and then we have a debate with the Democratic candidates for Scranton Mayor as well. And then we'll be live on ECTV on election night with your live election returns. So we invite you to tune in to Channel 19 on the Comcast dial and watch some of the programming that we have. We also, every other year, host campaign school, so that's our How to Run for Public Office seminar that allows people who are running for especially municipal elections some information on how they should hopefully succeed in winning their race. We help out with voter registration whenever we're asked to, and then the one fun thing that's not all work that we do every year is our Women's History Month essay contest that takes place in March. Again, I invite you to join us. We are a grassroots volunteer organization. I get many people who ask me, you know, how did I get this job? I stepped up and volunteered. That's how I got the job. And you can support our with either your membership or with a contribution. So if you appreciate the work that we do, then we ask you to make a financial contribution to the League if you're not into joining things. How to contact us, info@lwvlackawanna.org. That's my home phone number, 347-4001. And lwvlackawanna.org is our web address, and you can also find us on Facebook. Our panelists for this evening, I want to welcome Tom Baldino, Ph.D. Dr. Baldino is a professor of political science at Wilkes University. He is on the Luzerne County Board of Elections and Registration. He was appointed to that position in 2012. And in 2001 and 2002, he served on the Luzerne County Home Rule Charter Study Commission as an elected commissioner. So let's welcome Tom this evening. Thank you so much for driving down from Wilkes-Barre to be with us tonight. We appreciate your presence here and your perspective on the questions that we have before us. And I'd also like to welcome our second panelist, Dr. Jean Wall-Harris. She is Professor of Political Science and the Department Chairperson at the University of Scranton. And I'm very happy to say she's also a League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County board member and a past president of the League as well. So Jean, thanks for being with us tonight.
no problem.
So why are we doing this? Primary election day is May 21st. It'll be here before you know it. In Pennsylvania, we have a closed primary system. So that means that you only vote for candidates in your registered party, traditionally Democrat and Republican. So if you are registered as a Green Party voter or reform or an independent, but you're registered to vote. Normally, you don't vote in the primary. This year, it is so important that you come out and vote if you live in Lackawanna County. All registered voters cast ballots for questions and nonpartisan elected offices. So this year, there are 5 ballot questions. So if you're registered to vote in Lackawanna County, you should be coming out on May 21st to vote for the questions, for or against the questions. So home rule, in Pennsylvania, the state legislature passed the Home Rule Charter and Optional Plans Law in 1972. And it basically serves as the government's constitution when a municipality or a county adopts home rule. Lackawanna County is a home rule county, and our charter was adopted in 1976. And the Lackawanna County elected officials, per our home rule charter, per our constitution, this is what's stated in our charter. We have 3 commissioners, a controller, a treasurer, district attorney, a sheriff, a clerk of judicial records, a recorder of deeds, a register of wills, and a coroner. So I want to go over to my panelists this evening and ask a couple of questions. And you guys can toss it back and forth among yourselves. So why was home rule, this law that allows home rule, passed by the state? What's its purpose? And is there anything special about Lackawanna County's home rule charter that we should know before we dig into the questions?
You want to talk about the history a little bit?
Sure. Okay. So the concept of home rule is something that actually traces its roots back to the early part of the 20th century. It was part of what was called actually late 19th, early 20th century. It's part of what was called the progressive movement. The progressives were all about reforming government, ending corruption as was perceived to be corruption in that time period. The Gilded Age was rampant with corruption, and at the local level, state level, and to a certain extent at the national level. And so one of the things the progressives pushed for was to give people greater control over their forms of government. And traditionally, what had happened across the states was that state governments dictated to the municipalities below the state level the type of government that each municipality should have based upon the unit of government, whether it was a county or a borough, and the size of that municipality's population. So in Pennsylvania, we have first, second, third-class counties. If you're a third-class county, you have a particular assigned type of government. And the state legislature essentially, beyond just setting the type of government, the structure of government, also passes most of the laws that are governing the people in the municipality. And there's very little discretion on the part of the municipality government, the municipal government, county or otherwise, to change what's happening for the people who live in those municipalities. Home rule allows the people in a community to decide for themselves the appropriate structure of government, and also under home rule, the state moves out of the position of dictating many of the activities of local civic life that would have been the domain of the state government. Now the local government picks up that responsibility. There are some things that home rule does not allow for the county or the municipal government to change. You cannot eliminate a district attorney's position, for example. That's a mandated state elected position. Nothing that a home rule charter would incorporate or would try to incorporate could conflict with the state constitution or state laws. You can't change the tax code. So as a home rule commissioner, if you're thinking about instituting a new tax system, forget it. You can't touch it, right? You can set limits on tax rates, right? You can do things that limit spending by governments, but you can't change the structure of the tax system. So there are those constraints on home rule. But for the most part, the idea behind home rule was to give the people the ability to change their form of government, especially since most of these forms of governments at the municipal level trace their roots back to the 18th century and maybe mid-19th century. So they're antiquated in many cases. They need to be modernized. Now, when you take up that chance, the opportunity to adopt your own form of government, you can pick the form of government you want. And you could be creative, or if you go with an optional form, maybe we'll get to that, you kind of go to the shelf and the state says, here are several different types of government, pick one. So, okay, so.
And Lackawanna County adopted home rule in 1976. It's kind of unique in the counties that have home rule, and there aren't all that many in the state that have home rule. In 2009, the latest data I found, there were only 6 counties in the state that had home rule. Lackawanna didn't change the structure of government very much when it had the opportunity under home rule the first time. So we stuck with 3 commissioners. We do have a lot of elected officials, so a large plural executive system, larger than many other counties, especially those with home rule. So the structure that Lackawanna County government has now, based on what it had brought in under home rule, is not that different from the traditional county government that the state has legislated for those counties that do not have home rule. So Lackawanna County is interesting in that fact that it has home rule, but it doesn't look too different from the counties in terms of its structure from the counties that do not have home rule. So this would be an opportunity for the county to, again, take a look at the structures it has and decide if it's time to make some more major changes or not. And that's really what the commission is supposed to do, is really do a study, not come in with preordained ideas of what structure we want, but really to take a look at what we have and how it compares to other options that are out there, and base decisions and conversation on that.
So Lackawanna County is a home rule county, so we have our own determined constitution that was written back in the late 1970s that really hasn't been reviewed since then. So it prescribes the general piece of government, but then the administrative code of county government deals more with the day-to-day work of county government overall, right?
Right, and the administrative code, typically in home rule process, if you go home rule and you select a commission to do the study, they will come up with the charter, which is kind of the Constitution, and typically they don't propose the administrative code. That will come on down the road, and so they leave that typically to the folks in the new government structure to go through that process. What's interesting about Scranton, the city of Scranton, when they did the home rule process last time, was the Home Rule Study Commission also developed an administrative code. And that was unique in that typically home rule study commissions don't go into that detail. But yeah, so the real nuts and bolts, day-to-day functioning, you'll find more of that information in the administrative code.
Okay, so right now, that's what we are in Lackawanna County. So right now, coming up on May 21st, we will have 5 ballot questions. So 1 question was added to the ballot per legislation that was passed by the county commissioners. But then it was split into 4 separate questions by a court decision. And then 1 question, another question was added per citizen petitions. That question pertains specifically to the study commission that Jean had been talking about. But we're going to go first through the questions that were added to the ballot that are these 4 separate questions that were split by the court. So it's been a difficult process. Before we move on to the actual questions, let me just ask Jean and Tom. It was a difficult process because there was a lot of delay involved in all of that. So the county commissioners made a proposal, and then citizen petitions came into play at the same time, and then it had to go to the court, and then it was appealed. Are we done now with all the appeals and everything? Like, what we're talking about tonight, is that really what's going to happen on May 21st, or are we still kind of maybe it will and maybe it won't?
At this point, all that should be set for May 21st. So there are the 5 questions. The court split the 1 question from the commissioners into 4. That was appealed, and the courts agreed that that's the way it's going to stand. So at this point, I anticipate no changes to the ballot. Okay. So there will be the 5 questions and the list of candidates for the commission. That doesn't mean that down the road we won't have additional concerns and questions about interpreting the home rule law. And what it is exactly that the commission will do and how they'll proceed. And if indeed some of the ballot questions are answered yes and positions are eliminated, there may be, again, some concerns, and citizens, if they feel harmed, can always file lawsuits. And so anything's possible.
It's Lackawanna County, anything's possible, right? So let's go through these questions. So the first question is a referendum on the office of sheriff, and the order that I'm giving them to you here is the order that they're on the sample ballot that's been prepared by Lackawanna County. So shall the Lackawanna County Home Rule Charter be amended to abolish the elected office of the sheriff? So remember, it's in our Home Rule Charter that we have an elected sheriff, to abolish this elected office and deem the duties and responsibilities associated with that abolished office legislative powers under Section 1.3-302 of the Lackawanna County Home Rule Charter, said amendment to take effect upon expiration of the elected sheriff's current term. So the elected sheriff, that position is on the ballot right now, so that is up for re-election this year, or up for election this year. And if this question were to pass, abolishing that office, it would be abolished as of January 2014, according to what's in place right now. So we'll go through these first 4 questions, then I'll throw it back to you guys. So the second question, and these were the 4 that were split, so the county commissioners wanted all 4 of them into one question, and the court split them into 4. The second question is the referendum on the Office of Clerk of Judicial Records. And I won't read the entire thing again because the language is exactly the same, except for it's going to abolish the elected office of the Clerk of Judicial Records. And then again, deem the duties and responsibilities associated with that office as legislative powers. Again, this would take effect upon expiration of the current term, and the Clerk of Judicial Records is not on the ballot for election in this particular municipal election year, so this one would expire in January of 2016 if this question were to pass. The next question is the referendum on the Office of Recorder of Deeds. Exactly the same question, but now it's the Recorder of Deeds office that would become part of legislative powers. And this office is on the ballot in this year, so if this question were to pass with a yes vote, the office would be abolished in January of 2014. And then the Register of Wills office is the same thing, abolishing that particular office, and it would expire in January of 2014. What I find really interesting with all of this is that there's a primary election right now for 3 of these offices, so people are running for these offices right now, but if the questions pass, then are they not on the ballot in the general election because the office has been abolished?
Correct, and so they would not be on the ballot in the general election. So if the voters vote yes on any of these, the position that is abolished where someone is running, that campaign is over. And so their time and efforts will be for naught because the position will be eliminated. It's interesting, and I live in Wyoming County, and we have kind of a flip situation. Our county commissioners and several others in the state passed a law to eliminate a position, the judicial clerk position, commissioner position, judicial commissioner, jury commissioner, I'll get the name straight eventually, jury commissioner. And that was challenged, and the state court said that they didn't follow proper procedure, and so we are not eliminating that position, but at the same time, the County Board of Elections did not accept petitions for people wanting to run. So now we've got a position where the woman who's the incumbent will be done with her term in January, and no one has filed to run because they were not allowed to. So the county in Wyoming is going to have a special election, spend more money to fill the position because now it hasn't been eliminated. So we've got kind of a opposite problem occurring in Wyoming County. But it's not surprising that the judges divided these into 4 different questions. Did you want to talk to that?
Well, just, a couple of things. To have the question on the ballot the way the commissioners proposed it would have been unfair to the voters, because if you were voting against the Recorder of Deeds but wanted to keep the other 3, you wouldn't know that because you would have cast a vote for, but you would have gotten everything else. And so dividing the ballot the way the court did was a very wise move. The other thing that's really important to keep in mind is that voting to eliminate one of these row offices does not eliminate the function. Right. There needs to be a sheriff. There needs to be someone who does something that records deeds. There needs to be someone who does the coroner's office or whatever. Those functions continue. They just are no longer elected. which means that in the case of the coroner, how many funeral directors were elected coroner, and they still had to have a pathologist or a medical doctor on site or present to determine the legality of death. There are no qualities associated or criteria associated with running for any of these offices. So having them appointed makes sense. And again, this is modernization.
So, but we're not advocating yes or no tonight on any of these
That's
questions.
true. Yes.
But the question becomes, we term these very often as row offices.
Yes.
So Jean, row office, why did we call it a row office?
Really, because the offices used to be all in a row. I mean, it's that basic. But the system that we have, where we have 8 or 9 elected executives in the county government, in addition to our 3 county commissioners, so the commissioners being seen as kind of the legislative body, and then all these elected officials, it's called a plural executive system, and it's nice for citizens who want to have a lot of, say in who is in their government. And that's why the plural executive was set up, was so that citizens can elect lots of folks. Whether or not they're the right folks, because the lack of qualifications written into the law, so there are other things that can be done to change that. But really, they're row offices because they were physically in a row. And Lackawanna County has some of the highest numbers in terms of those row offices that we do have.
The other thing that we talk about a lot is that these are not policy offices. So can you speak to why do we say that?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, they carry out a function that is really not discretionary. The tasks that they are prescribed to do must be done. And maybe the discretion that they have is move that chair over there, and how many hours the office will be open. One of the things that I learned, and that my colleagues and I who served on the study commission that I was on in 2001 and 2, was how mechanized and automated, and not in a full mechanical sense, but how routine the work of many of the row offices really is. And as we looked at those offices, we made a determination. My Home Rule Study Commission's proposal failed to meet the voters' approval, but we now have Home Rule. And the study commission that created our current Home Rule system came to the same conclusion that my group did. And I will tell you one other little story. The prothonotary whose office was eliminated under the current Home Rule system sued in court, saying that it was illegal to eliminate her position. Didn't work. It's gone. The voters eliminated it, and when her term is up, she will, in fact, she actually resigned and is collecting a salary until her term is up.
So Tom, I just want to clarify. So for Luzerne County, you had a Home Rule Charter Study Commission in 2001, 2002.
Right.
The results of that failed. So you proposed a new Home Rule,
Right.
Home Rule Charter, and it didn't pass in the ballot box.
Right.
And then there was another Home Rule Charter Study Commission that was seated.
You have to wait 7 years between the time you have one and try again.
Okay. And then that was the one that everybody should be most familiar with,
Right.
because it happened last year that
Yes.
it came
So
through.
yes, it's been in operation a year and a couple of months.
Okay, all right. So those are the 4 questions that the county commissioners put forth. So there's 2 different ways that you can get a change in your charter on the ballot. The first way is that you can get legislation passed. So the county commissioners passed legislation that said they wanted this one ballot question with the 4 offices eliminated on the ballot. They passed it, it goes to the County Board of Elections, and it shows up on the ballot in the primary election, because that was their timing for it. So now what happens after that is someone challenged it, it went to court. So a citizen challenged it, it went to court, and the court made the decision to break this down into 4 questions. So the other way that you can amend the county, any home rule charter, is by citizen petition. So there's a prescribed number of signatures that you have to get. It depends on if it's county or if it's city. I don't remember what the numbers were. It was quite large for...
It's a percentage of the number of folks in the district who voted in the last gubernatorial election. So this is Lackawanna County, so it's a percentage of the voter turnout in the last election for governor.
So it was a large number.
Yeah, or 200, whichever is lower. And so in our case, I believe it was 200.
200 for the commissioners, but not to get the
Oh, I'm
question on the
sorry.
ballot.
Yeah, but it's a smaller percentage for the question on the ballot.
Right, so, but still, it was a lot of signatures on petitions to get the question on the ballot. So then that went forth as well. So now that's the other question that we want to talk about, and we'll spend most of our time this evening talking about this. So the referendum on the formation of a government study commission. This is the terminology, and the way the state law is written, you can pick one of 3 questions to put on the ballot when you're doing a Home Rule Charter Study Commission. This is the one that was chosen. Shall a government study commission of 7 members be elected to study the existing form of government of Lackawanna County, to consider the advisability of the adoption of an optional form of government, and to recommend whether or not an optional plan of government should be adopted? So at this point now, this question is on the ballot. And there's besides being 3 different questions that someone can pick, there's also 3 different sizes of the commission that can be chosen. So according to state law, the commission could be either 7, 9, or 11 members. The people who put forth the petition decided that they wanted a commission of 7 members. So that's what's going to be on the ballot. We don't get a choice now of saying, oh, no, wait a minute, I want 11 members on my study commission. It's 7, that's what we're voting on. And now we get to vote yes or no on this particular ballot question. And then also, according to Pennsylvania law, we elect the commissioners at the same time that we say yes or no on the question. So we go to the ballot box on May 21st, and we say, no, we don't want this question to pass, but we should still vote for the commissioners, if that's our choice, whatever. So if someone doesn't want the question to pass, they should still pick the 7 people that they want, so that they have a voice in who sits on that panel if the question does indeed pass. And again, I'm not advocating one way or the other tonight. I want to be clear on that. But what's really important to understand is, no matter how you feel about the question, pick the people that you want to sit on the commission, on the Government Study Commission, because if they are seated, you will have had a voice in who sits on that particular commission.
And this whole process is really a process of direct democracy, where citizens are really having much more input in their government. So citizens, through a petition process, a group of citizens chose this question out of the 3 possible ones. Citizens again chose that they wanted a commission of 7. They got the signatures required on the petition to have that put on the ballot. So that's all through citizen activity. And citizens registered to vote. Again, Democrat, Republican, or just registered. You don't have to be affiliated with a party on election day, primary election day. You want to go and vote. So there'll be, a ballot for registered voters who are not Democrats or Republicans. They will still have a ballot with all of these ballot questions on it, all 5 of these. And so as Andrea said, you want to vote yes or no to having the study commission, but however you vote, you also then want to make sure you vote for 7 candidates, because if the majority of citizens voting want the study commission, it will happen, and you will at least have had the opportunity to select the members to it. How large was the study commission in Luzerne?
Both times I was on one of 11, and then the next one was also of 11. And one of the things that's also needs to be remembered, the study commission spends 9 months studying the existing form of government. It's required that that be done. Then the commission takes a vote. Is there a need to change the form of government? If the study commission says there's no need to change, end of story, everybody packs up, goes home. There is no recommendation for a new form. If there is a vote to proceed, then there is another, it's a little more than a year, I think it's 18 months, before the commission then must propose a new form of government. So it's a two-stage process.
9 months and 9 months. So
Right,
it's
so
9 months
18
for
altogether.
decision,
Right.
and then 9 months for study, and then another additional amount of time before it goes on the ballot.
Right.
So
And
let's
there's a-
talk about the commissioner candidates overall. They are nonpartisan. They do not run as a Democrat or a Republican. They don't identify either way on the ballot. They are nonpartisan. They are also citizen volunteers. They are not paid for their duties. you should, once again, I can't say this enough, select commissioners for the study commission, even if you vote no on the question. It's really important. The size of the commission, again, will be 7, and the length of service is up to 2 years. So when you're looking at candidates, one of the things that you want to really understand is, do they have the time to put in 2 years' worth of service on this particular issue? You know, it's not that, it doesn't happen quickly. It's not overnight. It's not done. You don't walk in with a preconceived idea about what your form of government should be. So Tom, why don't you talk about maybe some of the things that you did as a commissioner when you were looking at, should Luzerne County's form of government be changed?
Okay, so we spent that full 9 months having open, everything we did was open, and in fact, the second commission did the same thing. Open meetings, started at a reasonable hour, 5, 6 or so, and then went hours, hours, sometimes ending at 11 o'clock. Most of our meetings were held at the Luzerne County Community College, but then when we got to the next phase, we literally went and moved our meetings to various places around the county. I got to see places in Luzerne County I'd only read about, right? So that was interesting, but it was a way for us to connect to the people and to hear their concerns. So that first 9 months of studying Luzerne County government meant we asked the members of county government to come to speak before our commission. Everyone except the county commissioners came. The minority commissioner eventually came, spoke, said he was in favor of home rule, and then he wasn't. But we also engaged in a conversation with some other counties. We started that process. So that when we decided to go forward with changing the structure of government, we then spent that next 9 months interviewing the counties that had home rule at the time. And back then it was Philadelphia, which it's in a league of its own, Delaware County, which is I think the second oldest home rule county, Erie County. One of our members actually traveled out there. We were not paid, but and this is something to also consider, the study commission must be funded by the county. And there was a bit of contention between our county commissioners and the study commission over how much the county study commission, the government study commission should have to do its work. We wanted to, rather than bring someone from Erie County, for example, to Luzerne County, we sent one of our own there, and county commissioners didn't want to pay. This person, out of her own pocket, drove out, interviewed people there, and came back. We also did Allegheny County, which was a recent addition to home rule. And I had Northampton County. We each kind of took a county. I did Northampton as a study, and then there was Lehigh. They were close enough. We brought people from the Lehigh and Northampton up to talk to us. So we really did a very thorough study of the differences between home rule counties, the various types of counties. We did bring Mr. Cordero from Lackawanna County to Luzerne County to ask what was different about Lackawanna's home rule county. He had nothing but great things to say about your home rule system. And we looked at what Lackawanna had done, and we didn't see anything drastically different. You had home rule, but you had row offices, and you had 3 commissioners. And his argument was, but as the minority commissioner, he had real authority. But you have 2 votes and 1 vote. How is that? Anyway, it was an interesting discussion that we didn't really find all that useful in the end. But we nonetheless spent that full 9 months studying, and then at least we took almost the full 9 months before we voted on a new charter. And then we had to decide, actually, once the charter's voted on, because we went with districts, we spent time looking at how to redistrict, or how to draw districts to accommodate the one person, one vote rule of the land, that's the law of the land. Every person's vote must count the same. So we had some people who were with expertise in GIS, generated different maps, and in fact I brought them, with basically getting roughly equal populations for we were proposing a council of 9 with 5 districts and 4 at large. Okay, that's what we proposed. The current council is all elected at large. Okay, so that was a difference. But we had extra time to do that because our group decided to go forward with districts, and that took another couple of months.
And that's one of the options. So the Pennsylvania, this is a manual put out by the Governor's Center of Local Government. And so if we have a home rule study in Lackawanna County, this is a document that everybody who is elected, all 7 folks, want to get a copy of.
It's free, by the way. Anybody can get that.
It's just hard to find online right now because the link is dead with some budget cuts, I expect, from the state. But there's a lot of information in here, and there are some specific decisions that the Home Rule Study Commission can make in terms of structure of government, the size, how many folks, and the method of election. So it still has to be election by the people who live in the area, but whether you divide the county up, as Tom was saying, into districts, and so an elected commissioner, if that's what you call the elected body, or council member, would represent just a subsection of the county. So districts are divided up, or you do it at large, so everybody who is elected represents the whole county, or you can do a mix. And so some counties have several of their commissioners or council members elected to represent the whole county at large, and others then by district. So there are some choices that the commission would make in terms of structure and elections and whatnot, and terms of office and how many folks are elected. So those kinds of decisions can be made by the county, but there are also some basic structures, as Andrea said before. You can't get rid of an elected district attorney, for example, because there is some superseding state law still, even when you're home rule.
And that's, bringing it back, even though in Lackawanna County, we haven't looked at our home rule charter in 37 years. In Scranton, we also have a charter that was adopted back in 1976. However, we did look at it, and then as Tom experienced the first time around in Luzerne County, the new charter was defeated at the polls when it was proposed. But I was involved, not as a commissioner, but I was part of the group that pushed to get the Home Rule Charter Commission seated originally. And many of the things that Tom talked about, we did here in Scranton as well. As part of Scranton Tomorrow, we brought in speakers that we asked the commission to hear. So we brought in someone from Johnstown who had been, a distressed city as well. So we brought in other people, someone from the Pennsylvania Downtown Center, and some other organizations that we felt were important for the commission to hear. So there's an opportunity, and again, it was a very open process. Every single meeting was televised. So at the time, it was Scranton Today. It's now ECTV, but every single meeting was televised from gavel to gavel, which did go until 11 o'clock on more than one occasion. The tapes were available for people. Back then, it was still videos. Sorry, it was available for anyone to see. Boy, does that sound old, and it wasn't that long ago.
Well, and the commission has to follow state laws, so the sunshine laws. The meetings have to be public and open, and minutes need to be kept of those meetings when the whole process is done. All those records need to be filed with a county clerk, depending on what clerks are still in place.
Every penny expended has to be counted.
And yeah, so you have to explain the budget, and the folks who are on the commission will have to develop a budget, if indeed the commission is approved, asking the county commissioners to spend it. There's some research done that suggests what the average costs are depending on the size of the population, but it is up to the county government to fund, and the commission has to operate in public and in public view, so it's a very transparent process.
Right. And I believe, and I could be wrong, and Jack Finnerty will forgive me if I'm wrong on this, but I do believe that the repository for the information on both the original Home Rule Charter Study Commission for Scranton and the one that was eventually defeated, that those records lie with the Scranton Public Library. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that's where we got our research when we started looking at the Home Rule Charter way back in 2000. And if I'm not mistaken, then the records from the newer Charter Commission actually went to the library as well. So Jack, forgive me if I'm wrong on that. You'll have to email me tomorrow. So one of the things that I want to say is that there are 38 candidates who are running for this 7-panel commission. We have been asked, the league has been asked a couple of times, are we doing anything face-to-face, asking questions? We've done the math. We just can't do it.
be
With
here until 2
38
in the morning.
candidates, we just can't do it. And we also felt it's a matter of volunteer time, but then the other end is your willingness to sit through how many hours of candidates and really to have something that you can mark up and read. So what we'll be doing in partnership with the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce, we'll be issuing a survey to all of the commission candidates and asking them to complete some information. It's not going to be a lengthy survey, again, because we're not looking to produce reams of paper, but that information will be compiled and it will be made available through the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce website and then also through the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County website as well. So there will be some information available to you. I know that when we did Scranton's Home Rule Charter a long time ago, we actually did a little booklet, so maybe we'll put it out in booklet form, and it allowed people to take it to the polling place and mark off who they wanted to vote for, because I believe there were 27 candidates for Scranton's Home Rule Charter Commission back then, but it was also an 11 member. What was it? 23? 43? No, there weren't 43. I'd have to count them. We're going to count them when we're done, Charlie, because this is all of them.
But that was also for a commission of 11. So again, this commission.
Right.
And Tom was saying in Luzerne County, they had
37.
37 candidates for a
For
commission of 11. So we're going to a commission of 7 here.
Right.
So we have a large number of citizens who have stepped forward, which again is part of what the home rule is supposed to be about, is citizens getting engaged. Only 7 of them will be on the commission if indeed we have a commission.
Right. So I think the important takeaways for tonight, before we get to any questions from the audience, the important takeaways from tonight are, number 1, there's 5 questions. Number 2, if you are a registered voter, regardless of in what party or non-party you are registered in, you should go, and you live in Lackawanna County, you should vote on May 21st for the questions. Now, one question on that, Jean. If someone goes to a polling place and they have some issue, the poll worker for whatever reason doesn't understand that they're supposed to be there to vote, what should someone do if they're having a problem with that?
Well, certainly they can talk to the judge of election. They can call the Lackawanna Board of Elections as well. At this primary election, county officials will probably be asking you for ID. You do not have to show it, so that the law is still in flux, another court case, but you probably will be asked. But if there's some kind of snafu and they're telling you you're not listed, they also can call to make sure that the rolls are correct, and that they're just not missing a page or something like that. That has been known to happen. But the folks who are working the polls should be able to help you, and if need, they can contact the County Board of Elections at that point.
So polite but firm, ask them to contact the Board of Elections and make sure that you are able to vote on those questions.
Yeah, I don't believe they expect to have any provisional voting in this. Do they? Dan, okay. So if all else fails, they should be able to give you a provisional ballot that won't be counted until they confirm that indeed you are eligible to vote, but that will be an option. So if they're still giving you a tough time, the provisional ballot is always an option, but hopefully it won't get to that.
Okay, so 5 questions. Vote regardless. If you're a registered voter, vote. The first 4 questions are a yes or no. Each individual office, say yes or no you want to retain, or yes if you want to eliminate the office. So a yes vote eliminates the office, okay? So yes, you want to abolish the office. That's what a yes vote means. No vote means you want to keep that office as an elected position. So that's the first 4 questions, and that's the order that they're shown on the sample ballot from Lackawanna County. So that's the first 4 questions. Then the next question is yes or no, do you want to seat a Home Rule Charter Study Commission? If you want to seat that commission, that answer is yes. So the first 4 questions are to abolish elected positions. The 5th question is to seat. Yes, I want to seat this commission. And at that point then, whether you vote yes or no on the question, you want to select 7 of the 38 candidates who are running for the commission, so that even if you said no and it passes, you have had a voice in who actually sits on that commission and studies our form of government. And I think one of the other things that, I try to make sure that I say all the time is that the commissioners should not go in with a preconceived idea about what they want to happen. It's a 9-month process, right, Tom? So
Absolutely.
You go in, and even if you have some idea about what you think it might be, and that's fine, everybody's got opinions on what you think that it should be, you still have to go through the process to study, and you should study and listen with an open mind. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes.
So I think that that's an important point when you're voting for the commissioners. And remember, too, this is not a quick, couple of meetings. How often did you, we met once a week here in Scranton. I don't know, how often did you meet in Luzerne County?
At least once a week, and I remember there were stretches where we were meeting twice a week. And that's when the crunch came, especially in that last 9-month stretch. There just was way too much to do. It's amazing how much goes into a home rule charter.
It's a constitution, right?
It is.
It's a constitution.
It is.
So when you're voting for people, you want to make sure that they understand what the time commitment is and that they're going to live up to that time commitment. Because I think as a citizen in Lackawanna County, that's important for me, that I want to make sure it's representative government. I want to make sure that the people who are representing me are going to be able to put in the time that needs to be put in. And then the last thing is that you can, we will be putting this information up. It's not available yet. I haven't even finished, the survey questions are written, but I haven't put it in a form yet that I can send out to everybody. So we'll hopefully get that taken care of this week. And the information before Election Day will be available on the Scranton Chamber's website, and then also the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County government website as well. So are there questions from the audience? And if there are, I would ask, because we don't have a microphone for the audience, would you just come up here and use this microphone so that we can capture it for ECTV?
Come on up.
And you can ask questions of Tom, Jean, or myself, whomever.
Bob McGough, City of Scranton. A couple of comments and clarifications, if you would. First of all, on the first 4 ballot questions, there is no consideration in those questions for a consolidation of those offices, correct?
Correct. It's abolish an elected position. It then becomes up to the county government commissioners to figure out where they go from there in terms of possibly consolidating. But as Tom said, the job still needs to be done.
Right.
So something has to happen.
Correct. And despite the fact that these are not policy offices or whatever you referred to them as, I'm sorry, there are qualifications that are needed in order to do those, to fulfill those responsibilities.
If you read the
Certainly
whole
there are
charter,
qualifications to be a sheriff.
Not if it's an elected office.
no,
Well, what I'm
not
saying is-
legal qualifications, no.
Right.
Citizen expectations for qualifications,
Okay.
yes. So the citizens, are going to vote based on whatever they perceive the qualifications are and which candidate has it, hopefully. But in terms of, if you look at the jobs as laid out, they don't say you need a college degree. They don't say you need.
Understood.
Yeah.
So right now, under the system that we have, it's up to the voters to determine who is best qualified
Correct.
to fulfill those responsibilities.
Correct.
Yes.
Should we abolish those, then that decision, who is best qualified to do that, becomes a decision for the county commissioners, which basically makes it just another form of patronage.
Well, and yes and no. If you end up abolishing those but creating a home rule study commission, they can write into the new documentation, the new home rule documentation qualifications. So, it's not an all or nothing kind of thing. So yes, but the way the questions are on the ballot right now, it doesn't specify what would happen, and it leaves the discretion then to the county commissioners.
To the commissioners.
Yes.
So again, it then becomes their decision as to who is best suited for that, to fulfill those responsibilities.
All right, but let me play devil's advocate, right? So the county commissioners now get to fill these various functions. If those functions fail to deliver the services, who's responsible?
County commissioners.
There you go. And they are elected. So ultimately, the county commissioners serve as the responsible parties for however county government functions. I'm not justifying it or defending it, but
I
that's how it's
understand.
supposed to operate. Okay?
I understand. I have a concern that what we're doing is we're taking away decision-making from the electorate, and again, putting it in the hands of the county commissioners, thus consolidating even more power in the hands of the county commissioners. It's just a
No,
concern that I think
Certainly
people,
it's a
of which
possibility.
people should be aware.
No, and those that we heard when I was on the commission in 01, 02, and the current county commission, study commission that produced the home rule, both sets heard that argument. Absolutely heard that argument. What can you say other than there are ways of providing checks and balances in either system such that the person who is elected, whether it's an independent elected row officer, can demonstrate responsibility as well as accountability, okay? But if you turn those into appointed offices, then the county commissioners are responsible and accountable for the activities of the people who are carrying out the function. It's just shifting the level, and it's, you can make arguments on either side.
And again, it's still going to be up to the voters eventually to hold
Right, somebody
everybody accountable, whether it's the elected official or the appointed official through the elected official. But yeah, it's a little bit more disjointed.
And
Thank
just to clarify what Bob had said originally, and we talked about this before the program started tonight, there is nothing that says that, okay, we're not going to elect them, but now each individual office would be appointed. That is a possibility. It is also a possibility that they could be consolidated or reformed in some other way. Nothing is spelled out at this point in time. So all the voters are being asked to do is abolish the offices, and then the decisions on what happens are up to the county commissioners. That's what this vote is right now. And that's what everyone in Lackawanna County has to decide for themselves. How do we feel about that in particular? It's a good question.
Yes. My other concern has to do with the Government Study Commission. A lot was put here and said about it being nonpartisan. When the people who presented the petition to have a Government Study Commission on the ballot put together a slate of candidates, I think it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that if those people are elected, that there will be, that it's not nonpartisan. They are going in with the predetermined idea that, yes, we will seek a new form of government.
Well, and that is, I mean, partisanship means Democrat-Republican. And so we're not talking Democrat-Republican in terms of.
Partisanship by what you're claiming, to be partisanship. My concern is that what they've done is Fix Lackawanna is now become a political party by running a slate of candidates.
Yes, but on the ballot, they're not listed
identified
together.
that way.
The ballot is 38 names.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So the ballot is 38 names, and people do not have to vote. One vote gets you a ticket of 7. So you're right. I mean, people can run as they see fit, and if they want to run as a collective, as a ticket, and advertise that way, they have the right to do that. It's up to citizens to recognize that they don't have to vote that ticket. They can vote any of the 38. And so as Andrea said before, you need to really pay attention to the individuals who are running and what they're saying as individuals. But you're right, they have selected, there is a ballot, there's a ticket who is running, which would suggest that they have some agreed upon ideas, whatever they are, but they have some agreed upon ideas, and voters have to recognize that.
Yes, and again, when you advertise that you are running as a collective, that to me becomes a political party. That becomes partisanship. And
It's a special interest,
you're not
if
calling it
nothing else.
Democrat, you're not calling it Republican, but it certainly is. It's politics as we've known it, in the past. It's really not changing anything.
But but I want to be clear in terms of the definition of nonpartisanship. It is nonpartisan per the way that the League of Women Voters defines partisanship.
And the
They are
state-
not running on the ballot in one party or another. The
By party,
names
it's
are
Democrat or
listed.
Republican.
They're not Democratic or Republican or any other party. Their ticket is not on the ballot. They're not grouped together in that way. I understand your point, but I want to be clear from a league perspective. I am not
Right.
agreeing with you on that, on that point in particular, because they are running as a nonpartisan. According to state law, this is a nonpartisan office. You're talking about a special interest group. It's not the same thing as being nonpartisan.
And one of the.
In the technical
Right.
definition of the word. I understand what you're saying, but technically, what I'm saying is true. It is a nonpartisan office.
But it is, there is a collective of interest running, and they would like you to vote for them as a collective. The reality on ballots, so you've got 38 folks listed, and we were just talking about this. Your placement on the ballot matters.
Ballot position.
So, people tend to vote from top down. And so everybody wants to be the first person on the ballot, and in this case, 1 through 7, because those people are going to possibly get more votes just because people vote 1 through 7. What position were you?
11.
And you got on.
I had no friends.
But I
Pure
mean,
luck.
so the ballot isn't laid out clustering folks, but certainly people can campaign that way, and voters have to be aware of that and what that means. And so it's important to educate voters, and that's part of what this evening's program is, educate voters that they can vote for any of the 38, whether or not they're running as a collective or not, and recognize what it means when they are running as a collective.
And, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, when I was on the study commission and running, the people who pushed the question had a slate. They were scattered across the 37 ballot positions. I happened to get lucky enough to have that ballot position that I met the cutoff, and I got on. I was not on the slate. There were several of us who were not on the slate. And the same thing happened with this, the last one. People were all over the place.
And again, I would like to thank you for your participation and the League of Women Voters, because I do think that there needs to be a great deal of clarification within the next couple of weeks so that people can make an informed choice. And thank you, Andrea. You do a great job of doing
Thanks.
that.
Thanks for the questions, too. They were great questions.
questions.
Yes.
I have a question that I talked to someone on the phone about, and I just want to make sure that we're on the same page with this. So say, for example, that, and I should probably bring this, but thank you. Sorry, Mark. Say, for example, that we'll just say the Recorder of Deeds office is abolished per this particular, and the other 3 offices stay. The Home Rule Charter Study Commission can certainly decide to put that office back in. It's not off the table. Just because it
Right.
gets voted as, yes, abolish it now, it doesn't mean everything. Everything is to be considered when the commission is seated. So if the people say, now I'm sure the commission would also take into consideration, if the people voted to abolish the office, that there would be some sense of, hey, this is what the people in Lackawanna County want. Possibly, but it can certainly be written back into a new charter.
Once you open up that door, assuming you vote to change form of government, everything is open.
Yeah.
Except for those things that aren't, like state laws and the state constitution.
I think one of the things that I didn't stress enough tonight, and I think that we really need to focus on this now for a few minutes, is the idea that just because the commission is seated and just because the commission decides that they want to do something, it doesn't matter. If the ticket that you're talking about, Bob, wants to change the form of government, it has to come back on a ballot before the electorate again.
To the voters.
2 years hence, from when they're seated, it has to come back on a ballot, and it's voted up or down. And that's what happened in Scranton. We had a new home rule charter, and it was voted down. The first time that Tom was, it was voted down. So it still comes back to the ballot. And then from your perspective, what was the difference this time around? Why did it pass this time versus not the last time?
More scandal?
Okay, all right,
There was a scandal in 2000
okay.
that produced a backlash that created a government study commission. And there were additional scandals, mainly the people who were elected county commissioners. One of them went to jail. The FBI came in and was conducting other investigations. That pushed it over.
So regardless of, whatever the commission decides they want to do, it still is up to all of us, the voters of Lackawanna County, who will have to decide, yes, we accept and we agree with what the commission puts forth, or no, we don't agree with it and we want to retain the current form of government. And that's what happens. You keep your current charter. The charter can always be amended with ballot questions. There is no vote of the county commissioners that can amend your charter. It has to go on a ballot question. So this, abolishing these row offices, it has to go before the voters. The county commissioners cannot decide unilaterally to do that. Anything that they want to do to change the home rule charter has to go on a ballot, including changing the home rule charter completely has to go on a ballot. So regardless of, whoever is elected, if they decide they want to change it and the electorate says no, they don't want to change it, well, then we keep the form of government that we have. And again, I'm not advocating for anything one way or the other tonight, just trying to put it all out.
And this is really an opportunity for people in Lackawanna County. This is what democracy is supposed to look like in terms of the citizen participation and really having a say in the foundational document of the government, which is the Home Rule Charter. And so, as a political scientist, I find this very exciting, and people in Lackawanna County should be excited about this. It really gives you an opportunity to decide to make a change or not, to have a commission, agree with what the commission wants or not. It really is up to the voters, and so getting out and voting on the primary and then down the road, if there is a commission and if they do propose something, voting on that, it really gives the people a lot of power.
I think it is so educational. It was one of the best civics lessons of my life, was paying attention to what was going on with the Scranton's Home Rule Charter Study Commission. I learned more about government than I had ever learned before in my life, and learned about things that I didn't know were possible with city government as well. So when you start looking at things that happen, you live in one area. I've been in Scranton most of my life, not all of my life, but most of my life. And when you live in an environment, that's all you know, and you don't even think sometimes about, well, what else is possible. So the opportunity to learn about these other things was a terrific opportunity for me, and a great way to learn about what was going on. Charlie, you had a question? Come on up.
Thank you, Andrea. Thanks for your patience, Dr. Baldino. Nice to see you again. I have a couple questions. Number one, you touched on it a little bit, and you touched on it a little bit, the mandate that this potential commission would have. The wording of the question says to consider the advisability of the adoption of an optional form of government, and obviously recommend whether that would be approved by the voters or not. But you mentioned a couple minutes ago that once the door is open, everything's on the table. Talking about abolishing these offices, while the commission sits, if one of these offices should be abolished, while the commission sits, the commissioners will be figuring out how to pick up those duties. Yet the commission could restore that office, create it as a new elective office combined with other things, you leave it as appointment, but then if you're saying that the mandate is wide open, an appointed person could have a list of qualifications they must fulfill in order to run that office.
Yes.
Okay, all those things sounds like they're
Possible.
kind of what I was thinking about.
yes.
Once the door is open,
Yes.
a lot of things can happen.
The Home Rule Charter can be very detailed in terms of having a position and then fleshing out in a somewhat broad way, in a rather broad way, the general qualifications for the position.
Okay. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Charlie Spano, by the way. I was on the Scranton Home Rule Commission 12 years ago, from 1999 to 2001. I had ballot position 40, and I came in number 8.
Good for you.
Very good.
And it was work, a lot of work. There are a couple other things that you'd mentioned about constitutionally mandated offices. I believe the sheriff is a constitutionally required office in Pennsylvania.
But it need not be elected, so there are law
okay.
enforcement.
Okay. So
Yes.
it could be appointed. All right. The other question was about the budget. And I know that the municipal government or the governmental agency that is affected by a charter question must, under law, fund the expenses. What was the budget for the Luzerne Commission? I think the Scranton Commission was 50,000 or thereabouts. We hired a solicitor, so.
Yes. And that's where the real,
Big expense.
yeah, the biggest expense, the largest expenses, the solicitor, and our group and the current group, or the last group, hired a consultant. Both times hired the Pennsylvania Economy League. And Pennsylvania Economy League was excellent. Same people, in fact, from the PEL work with us and work with the last group. There was some cost for paper and pencils
Right.
and
Stationery.
Stationery.
Maybe computer stuff.
Stamps.
Yeah.
We purchased a mailbox at the post office. I don't think our budget exceeded $50,000, or if it did, it wasn't by that much.
Right.
The second go-around, for the second year, that was 1 year, the budget, we asked for a little bit more because we had to publicize
Right.
the charter.
little booklet.
And we argued about the best way to publicize it. We wanted to get copies of the charter into everyone's hands. County commissioners refused to pay for the printing of the charter to make a massive distribution. We found a way of getting around that. There's actually something called Big House Printing. SCI Dallas, or one of the prisons, has an in-house print shop, and they work really inexpensively. And that's where we got
We
our
may have to
printed
outsource.
things, and we circulated them around as best we could.
I think
So we
that
kept within budget, but it was tough.
Could a-
Scranton, I'm sorry, but Scranton had a transcriptionist too, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken. So
she was
there
there.
was an expense for
So
that,
there's a
too.
written record of that.
Yeah.
And I think Scranton Tomorrow paid for the printing of the book and the distribution. Not the
This was-
distribution, but well, you mailed it to.
This was, no, we didn't
Newspaper.
mail. This was actually inserted in the Times.
Something, yeah.
At the time, it was the Scranton Times, and it was, Scranton Tomorrow paid part of it, and the Scranton Times put in the rest of it.
several,
But
like
this was a
50
booklet that
of
we
these put in
produced
libraries
for
and
the
booklets.
commission to be seated. It was not, we did not do the publicity for the new charter. That was something that was the responsibility of the Charter
Because
Commission.
we had the booklet printed and we were out trying to pass it around.
Right.
I guess another question would be, in terms of the whole budgeting process, could donors, private individuals, could a mechanism be set up, sort of like a PAC or a political campaign fund, where people could donate to help use this money to cover the expenses or the promotion of the charter?
Okay, two parts. I don't believe that PACs could be used to fund the work of the charter, okay? The commission. At the point at which the commission adopts the charter to be placed before the voters, then groups can form and collect money for the purposes of advocating for or against the charter.
And
And
that
we
did happen in
experienced that.
Scranton.
Yep.
It's after the initial period has gone by and a new charter's being proposed.
There has to be something placed before the voters,
Right.
and the people who are for and against can organize, set up political action committees, or an individual can write a check that funds the activity. This is
And-
Pennsylvania. Anything goes when it comes to funding.
And the hope is too, though, or even early on, I mean, in-kind service, so someone letting you use the
Yes.
space to have your meetings, and so, I mean, those are donations,
Yeah,
in-kind donations. So there is that kind of activity that can occur through the study process. So it's a balance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? No? Jean, Tom, anything in closing?
Just to encourage people to vote on primary election day and here in Lackawanna County. If you're registered, even if you're not in a party, you should go out and participate. So pay attention to the websites where you will be able to get information on candidates and in news reports as more people answer questions about both eliminating positions or not and voting for or against the Home Rule Charter Study Commission and for and against candidates.
I would reiterate the strong encouragement to vote. I would also suggest that the people who are running for the study commission place themselves out there. The one group that I was, in my year, the slate, held meetings and invited all the other candidates to show up. And like the various civic groups in the county the Kiwanis, the Rotarians, they held meetings and invited the candidates. Those of us who showed up, maybe we had 1 minute to say something, but everyone got to see us, and that helped. And more importantly, it educated the voters as to what home rule is about.
So a couple things for the League of Women Voters. You'll find all of our programming on ECTV in the Comcast dial in Lackawanna County on Channel 19. Also available on our website through YouTube. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Mark. We have 4 additional events that are scheduled. We'll have a candidate forum with the candidates for the Register of Wills, Lackawanna County Register of Wills. We'll have, that one will be tomorrow evening on April 30th. On May 8th, we will have a debate with the Democratic candidates. There are only Democratic candidates for Scranton City Council. On May 13th, we will have a debate with the 2 candidates who are running on the Republican ticket for Scranton Mayor. And on May 14th, we will have a debate with the 4 candidates that are running for Scranton Mayor on the Democratic tickets. In addition to that, I want to say that I know that the Times Tribune is planning a voter's guide, and there will be information on, I believe, all of the offices in Lackawanna County. Yes, I'm getting a yes from Boris Krachniuk, in the voter's guide from the Times Tribune. So, you know, again, a good way to see the names of all of the candidates who are running. You have 38 candidates who are running. It's going to be, you're going to have to take some time. No looking at it at 10 o'clock the night before Election Day, okay? You have to spend a little bit of time to figure out who you want to vote for this study commission. So it's a little bit, you know, it'll take a little bit more time this year to figure it out. On top of that, and we are not covering it this year because we're doing so much work around the Home Rule Charter Study Commission, we're also electing school board members, another important office. So there's quite a bit on the ballot this year. It's a really large ballot, so you want to make sure you get out and vote, but do take a look at all of the resources that are available through the League's website, through the Scranton Chamber's website, the Times Tribune, and the voter's guide that the Times Tribune will have as well. So thank you all for being here this evening. We appreciate it.